I read an interesting quote the other day from Laird Hamilton. I've never heard of him before, but I actually loved this quote. And it said, "Make sure your worst enemy doesn't live between your own two ears." When it comes to financial matters, and really even others, we often perceive our success or failure as something that happens to us. But that isn't truly the case most of the time. We create our journey one step or decision at a time. And I have known people who had life circumstances that could have absolutely derailed their financial journey. And Janet has shared her own, kind of story. If you've never heard it, it's worth going and finding, about her family and some medical expenses that happened because of an accident. And they bounced back and they're flourishing. So to say that I have no control over my financial journey or my life journey in general, to me, it really is kind of your worst enemy. So, the title today is the number one threat to your finances. And the short answer is you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really like that quote as well. I resonate with it just because, we can be our own worst enemy. Our thoughts live in our mind rent free, right?
And I think that's why scripture says to take them captive.
Yeah.
Because I think often we tell ourselves that if that follow your heart, follow your no. Your emotions lack intellect. So if you allow your emotions to control your decision making, it is never going to end well consistently.
Yeah.
Just to be brutally honest.
I have conflicting emotions just about, every other week or so.
To include lunch. Like I have conflicting emotions about lunch. I have about big things too. But, we can kind of break this down into a few different kind of categories of how we can be our own worst enemy or how we can be a threat to our own financial journey. And the one that I picked to be first is because it does tend to have the biggest impact. And that's not having a plan. Yeah.
We've talked about this, many, many times. But yeah, this is one of those areas where you, and I'm going to include myself in that, I can be my worst enemy, because when you look at the purpose of a plan, right? Understanding your finances, ensuring that you've got your needs covered and being able to provide a structure for your financial decisions. Like those are all fantastic things that I think everybody wants to have. Yeah. But whenever it comes down to the brass tacks, it's like, okay, like
if I approached you and I said, "Hey, would you like to understand your finances better? Would you like to ensure that you have funds to cover your expenses? And would you like to have structure your financial decisions?" You'd be like, "Yeah." But if I walk up to you and I say, "Hey, you got a budget?"
So,
people get all stressed, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, we've got to really start understanding when you look at people who are what we would consider successful, and success is not universal. I'm not going to say that. But when I look at people that I go, man, they're doing great. To me, that's not necessarily always financial. But what I've noticed about those people is they have goals.
Of course.
And when you're talking about your finances and setting goals, we've talked about setting SMART goals before, but we felt like it was worth reminding you what that means. So SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So get rich is not a good goal. It's not a SMART goal.
Right. Yeah. Becoming a millionaire. Okay, great.
Yes. So, it's important that your goals be not just specific, but measurable. So rich is not really measurable because it's not a specific dollar amount.
Right.
And by the way, what you think is rich, when you get there, you probably won't think is rich anymore. And then achievable. So if you say, "I want to go to the moon," well, are you young enough to even qualify to join NASA? Or, there has to be some stuff that you can, make sure you can achieve it. Not that it's easy, but that it's achievable.
Yeah. And it doesn't tell you what the steps are to get there either, So yeah, having, like you said, having that specific measurable, time-bound, items listed out is to me what makes all the difference.
And if you've got big goals that are things you can achieve in a really short time period, then you've got to break them up. So for instance, if you want to go to Hawaii, if that's something you've always wanted to do, and you research how much it costs to go to Hawaii, then you can say, okay, if I want to go to Hawaii in 3 years, this is how much I need to save per month to get there.
Exactly.
That's how you create that financial goal. It doesn't have to be super complicated.
This is kind of like what I do is for my travel savings. I just have, a certain amount of money that I'm putting away into my travel fund. That way, if I feel kind of a spontaneous, desire to just go and venture somewhere, I'm like, okay, do I have the money? Yes. Okay. Excellent. Then.
Right. So you just plan ahead knowing you're going to want to. You just haven't named the location yet.
Yeah.
And if there's money in there to do it, you get to do it.
Exactly.
The key is if there's not money in there, you don't get to do it, right?
Yes. That is.
That's the flip side of that budget is you've got to learn to stay within those boundaries. With retirement, it's really about income. How much income do you think you're going to need in today's dollars to live the lifestyle you see yourself living in retirement? If you can identify that number, then your advisor can help you figure out how to get there.
So with retirement, that is kind of like your big long-term goal, right? But there's like lots of little goals in between there, and also lots of milestones that you can talk about in getting ready for retirement.
Celebrate. Yes. Yeah. So when you're creating your plan, you also have to have kind of like the what ifs set aside. Yep. So gotta have an emergency fund. I know it's no fun to just have money sidelined, but it's critical. If your car breaks down, if your refrigerator breaks, if those both happen in the same year, like it did for me, you've got to have some funds set aside so you can avoid a piling up debt.
Exactly. So, the banks don't let you borrow money for a house without homeowners insurance. The car lot that you bought your car from also doesn't let you drive off until you've got car insurance. So yeah, all of these things are for that what if.
And then regarding retirement, the research, we both did the Retirement Income Certified Professional training, which is a special designation for retiree planning, retirement income planning. And one thing that I found really interesting in that class is that the bulk of people don't retire when they planned to. Something happens in their life where they are required to, or they choose to because of family commitments or
health
illness of a family member. And now aging parents is a very common reason. People needing to retire to take care of aging parents. So
that's right.
You got to have that what if in mind too. It would certainly make a lot of sense to get a head start on your retirement and slam it early instead of waiting till later, so that if you end up having to leave early, you're ready.
Yeah. So it's so crucial to just take time to write down what are the priorities that matter most to you, right? And it's so important just to write them down, because otherwise, thoughts are just so fleeting.
They're like butterflies.
Yeah. It just whatever's on the mind right now. So having those written out will help you kind of get started on building your SMART goals.
Yes. And then the next kind of threat that we see is not sticking to or executing the plan. So you took time to create it. You wrote out your goals. You've got all your steps. Do you actually follow through?
No.
So if you labeled what matters most in your journey, you hopefully created those steps. How is that execution going? Do you have a budget? Awesome. Do you actually stick to it? And then how often do you evaluate it to make sure that it's still accurate? Because life changes. Expenses change. If your budget isn't being adjusted regularly as well, then it may just not be useful anymore.
Right. Yeah. One metric that I think is really useful in this is just the implementation metric. Like, so as you're building your SMART goals and going through that, there's some things that are going to work. There's other things that are not going to work. Right. But making sure that, whatever it is that you set out, whatever habits or, action items that you create for yourself, that you follow through on those, and understanding or identifying, how well you're implementing each one of these habits is just really, really crucial as well, because I think a lot of times we've talked about the most successful people that we see on a regular basis are just folks that were consistent.
Yes.
Right. So having that consistency is the outcome of the application of good habits.
And when it comes to savings goals, automating those is one of the most useful tools we've seen for clients. Whether you're adding to an IRA, an employer plan, having it set up where you don't have to think about it. With your emergency savings, I have tons of clients who have money taken straight from their check to the savings account every month, so that they don't have to think about it, so that it can keep building. And as we've talked about before, and we'll just keep preaching, please, please, please stop leaving money on the table at your employer and capture the match.
Yeah. So we talk about, the budgeting. Do we talk about life insurance, right? Because again, it's just so important. your car is really important. So you've got, car insurance to make sure that that thing gets replaced if something happens to it. What if something happens to you, right? That is so important because your family might be at jeopardy in that standpoint. So
yes, I wish they could rename life insurance and call it lifestyle insurance, because that's what you're really protecting. You're protecting your family's lifestyle. If something were to happen to me and I didn't come home today, my kids still need support. My husband's going to need some help to get over this time period where we're down to one income instead of two. I think it's so important, to really think through what you need. And then, for us, we tend to have to kind of chase people. They'll go, man, I do need some life insurance. So we connect them with Tony, and then it's a little bit of a chase. But you've got to get those things in place, because if something happens and you don't have it in place, it could be catastrophic for your family's future finances. Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned Tony, because we believe insurance is so important, right? Whether that be, life insurance or long-term care insurance or even just health insurance, that we have an insurance specialist on staff to make sure that, we've got somebody that can do a proper review and create a proper analysis for people to identify their needs and provide a solution.
Yes. And another thing that is a threat to your family's finances is if you don't consistently review your beneficiaries. I think a lot of people, they set it up when they first, do things. We had a situation several years back where there had been a divorce and a remarriage. New wife has the same first name, which doesn't happen often, but it just happened. And we were doing a review, and the new wife looks at the paperwork and goes, huh. We thought, what's going on? The middle initial was wrong. So we have all of these accounts. He had never updated the beneficiary to them, to the new bride. So, and we had just gotten them all over. It wasn't like it was our mistake, but we review that every year with our clients. And so had we not had that review and something had happened to him, she would have gotten nothing. Yeah. It would have all gone to the first wife. And I don't know all the circumstances. I don't know if that would have been a good thing or not, but it certainly was not a good situation in the room. So checking that regularly is really, really critical.
It's kind of one of those Ron Swanson types of situations, huh?
Yeah, probably.
Tammy number 1, Tammy number 2.
Probably. So we talked about not having a plan. We talked about implementation being critical. And then I alluded to this early on, and I'm going to circle back to it, and that's emotional decision making.
Yeah. And this is kind of the gut check for everybody, because we've got to be in a clear headspace, to make good decisions. But a lot of times, a lot of the decisions are emotionally driven.
Yes. And most of the mistakes, whether it's financial or life mistakes, if I'm just being brutally honest, that I have made, that I have seen others make, that I've heard about, happened when people were in a heightened state of emotion, whether it's really happy or really sad. Right. One of the things that emotions can create is what's called recency bias. So, or what people call a closed or a fixed mindset. So I'm in a bad place now. It'll always be bad. This thing will make me feel better. I'm going to act on an outside force to make me feel better, which doesn't usually work. Things are often not as bad or as good as you think they are. And then the flip side, things are great. Everything's going wonderful. So everything will always go wonderful. So it doesn't matter if I waste this money because I'll just have more tomorrow. And then something happens. So, one of our friends has had some health challenges, and she shared with us the other day that she has noticed a pattern that when she has to have a procedure done, that while she's recovering, she tends to overspend. Yeah. And so this last time she set some boundaries for herself to help herself not do that because she recognized that. So I think the first step in emotional decision-making therapy for yourself is to notice what you do and then start creating some boundaries.
Right. Yeah, and that's so important for many areas of life, but absolutely when it comes to financial decisions, I think just from personal experience, whenever we talk about emotional decisions, I think a lot of times what people can hear from that is, okay, then am I just supposed to freeze and not do anything? Because we have emotions every day, right? We've got all kinds of thoughts and, events happening to us on a daily basis. So are we just, supposed to do nothing or what? So the boundaries, right? The limits that you place on yourself are, I think, so important as a starting point, of where to go. Right. So you set, like you said, so our friend, she the first step for her was recognizing what she does. The next step was creating boundaries. And then I think, the following step on that is, making sure to have accountability on that, right?
Yes.
And that's why so many people decide to, either, go with if their goal is to become, more fit, then they go to a fitness coach,
Mm-hmm.
right? If their goal is to be financially fit, right, then they go to a financial advisor.
Mm-hmm. And I think there are some basic steps that you can set for yourself too. If you're really, really struggling with like managing your spending,
Mm-hmm.
you can just carry cash.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is like it's a Dave Ramsey type thing, but it worked for me when I was trying. We were living off one income. I had 2 babies, and I noticed that when I went grocery shopping, I would overspend.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I took in cash, and I did not bring in my wallet.
Yeah.
Y'all, I've never paid attention to what I'm spending more carefully than when I was terrified I'd get up to that register and have to go, I'm so sorry. Can you put that back and that back and that back? But what I found was freedom in that eventually, because I knew leaving that store that I had not overspent, and I could take pride in that.
Yeah.
I was doing my part.
I bet you made sure to carry a calculator with you every time.
I actually did. Yes. I carried a calculator. I knew what the tax rate was, and I rounded up. Like, I was pretty OCD. But I've mentioned previously that with Amazon, I tend to overdo it. So I had to take my card off so that I would have to enter the data every time.
Yeah.
There's things you can do. I have a friend who it has to stay in the cart for a week before she'll purchase something online, because that's where a lot of people tend to do their emotional stuff.
Right.
And then with investments, y'all, we have not held back on our belief when it comes to investments. Investments are long-term vehicles for the most part. And you cannot, as a pre-retiree, if you're building wealth, you cannot be constantly reacting to the market if you want to benefit long-term. You've got to have the right viewpoint about how the market works and how it is intended to be utilized.
Yes. So we've got 2 groups of people, right? Our pre-retirees and our retirees. And essentially, when you boil it down, for our pre-retirees, it's, you've got to have a plan in place where you can say, okay, this is a long-term goal, right? So you're not going to let the ups and downs of the market let you create an emotional decision. And if you're a retiree, then hopefully you've got a plan in place to where those ups and downs are factored into the plan.
Yes.
To where it's not gonna make a big impact on what you do.
Yes. And if you find that you don't have that security as a retiree, that is why we do what we do. Our goal is to create plans that, whether the market is up or down, still work. So if you don't have that, reach out to our team. It is time for our 2 cents. We're running a little long today, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Yeah. So the number one threat to your finances, please don't let it be you, right? Don't let it be your inaction. So create a plan, stick to it, keep your emotions in check, make sure to have accountability. And if you need any help on that, please reach out to our team.
Having a plan is kind of our thing. Benjamin Franklin was quoted saying, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And your plan's going to need to adjust over time. You may fall on your face, but you can always get back up and keep going. And that's what matters most. So thank you guys so much for joining us on Talking Sense today. We hope we've helped you identify some things that you can apply in your life. If you enjoyed our podcast, we'd love it if you would give us a like, follow, and subscribe. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to the Talking Sense podcast. And if you like what you hear, make sure to subscribe to the podcast to get all the newest episodes.
The Gen Wealth team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com, or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526.
And while we like to have fun here, we're also financial advisors, and that means disclosures. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success.
Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.